Hey everyone, welcome back. So, if you are listening to this, you're probably trying to figure out what's the best way to heat your home, like heat pump versus natural gas. And I think a lot of you are probably feeling like there's so much info out there, it's kind of hard to sort through. So, that's what we're going to try to do today in this deep dive. We have two sources that we're looking at one that kind of looks at a national cost comparison, and then one that sort of zeroes in on California, because California is its own special little snowflake. They always like to do things a little differently there.
Yeah, they do.
So,
It's interesting because these sources, at first glance, kind of seem to contradict each other a little.
well, yeah, the first one that looks at the national picture kind of throws you a curveball right off the bat. You'd think that natural gas would be the cheaper option, but it turns out that heat pumps can actually be more cost effective in a lot of starts.
Yeah. And that's because heat pumps are crazy efficient. They're not generating heat like a furnace. They're moving existing heat around. Like, think of it like a refrigerator in reverse.
Okay, so let's talk about this whole efficiency thing. The source talks about this idea of COP, which stands for coefficient of performance. So for, those of us who aren't engineers, what does that actually mean? And how does that affect, like, my wallet as a homeowner?
Well, think of COP kind of like miles per gallon you get with your car. The higher the COP, the more heating power you're getting out of each unit of electricity you use, making it cheaper to run. Like a COP of 3, which is pretty common these days, means you're getting 3 units of heat for every 1 unit of electricity you use.
Yeah.
And this is why heat pumps can be competitive even when electricity prices aren't super cheap.
So it's not just about the upfront cost of the unit itself, it's also the cost to actually run the thing over time. And the source breaks it down by state, which is really cool. Like heat pumps come out ahead in places like, Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas. But natural gas is still the winner in like Alaska, California, and Colorado. So where you live really, really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And energy prices, which vary a lot across the country, are a huge part of that equation. In fact, the source actually puts a number on it. They say that $0.165 per kilowatt hour is kind of that tipping point. If your electricity costs less than that, heat pumps are likely going to make more financial sense even with that higher upfront cost.
So you could actually go and look at your electric bill and see what you're paying per kilowatt hour. And if you're under that threshold, it sounds like heat pumps could be a real contender. That's good practical information. But then I'm curious about the flip side of that. What if you live in a place with higher electricity costs? Does that mean you're automatically stuck with natural gas?
Not necessarily. There are other factors to consider.
Yeah.
And that's where that second source comes in, the one that looks specifically at California, which, as we know, tends to have those higher electricity prices.
Right. And this is where things get interesting. The source basically says heat pumps straight up don't make financial sense in California in 2025, which is a little bit of a shocker, especially after hearing how cost effective they can be in other parts of the country.
Right, and it all comes back to those electricity prices. California's rates are consistently above that point, 165 per kilowatt hour threshold, which makes gas furnaces the more economical choice right now, at least if you're just looking at it purely from a cost perspective.
But the source does kind of hint that this might not always be the case, right?
Exactly. The source acknowledges that future technological advancements could really change the game. Like, we're seeing incredible innovation in heat pump efficiency and better integration with renewable energy sources like solar. These factors could be game changers even in those high-cost areas like California.
So for folks in California or anyone else in that same boat, with higher electricity costs, it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Yeah, you really have to think beyond just today's prices. You got to consider long-term trends in technology and energy, and even think about your own personal values. Like, if sustainability is really important to you, a heat pump might still be appealing, even if it's not the absolute cheapest option right now.
That's a good point. It's not always just about the dollars and cents. Sometimes it's about what matters to you. And speaking of dollars and cents, both sources point out another cost that often gets overlooked in these debates, and that's maintenance. Nobody likes to think about it. But, it's a reality of homeownership. You got to budget for it.
Oh, absolutely. The sources say that annual maintenance for a heat pump can run you anywhere from $100 to $300, while for a gas furnace, it's usually between $70 and $130.
Wow, that's actually a pretty big difference. Why is there such a gap there?
Well, it comes down to complexity. Heat pumps have more moving parts, more things that can potentially go wrong, so they require more specialized expertise to maintain, which can drive up those costs.
Yeah. So even if a heat pump might save you money on your energy bills, you got to factor in those ongoing maintenance expenses. It's a trade-off, like most things in life, I guess.
Exactly. And this is where having a really good HVAC technician becomes crucial. They can really assess your needs, factor in those local energy costs, and help you make a smart decision about which system makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Before you go and make a decision, it's always a good idea to talk to a pro, someone who understands both systems. Okay, so we've covered a lot so far. We've talked about national trends. We zoomed in on California specifically. We even touched on those sometimes forgotten maintenance costs. I don't know about you, but I'm actually kind of fascinated by how much goes into choosing the right heating system. It's not as simple as it seems on the surface.
It really isn't. And it's funny because we always tend to focus on the immediate costs. But what about the future? Like what innovations are coming down the pike? That could totally change this whole conversation around heat pumps.
Yeah, that's a great point. Technology moves so fast these days. What might not make financial sense today could be like a total no-brainer in a couple years. So what are some of the things you're seeing that could make heat pumps even more appealing in the future, even in those areas with higher electricity costs?
One thing that's really exciting is the development of these super efficient heat pumps. We're already seeing COPs of 4 and even 5 in some of the latest models. Imagine what a COP of 6 or 7 could mean.
Okay, wait, hold on. Break that down for me. What would a COP of 6 or 7 actually look like in real life? How would that affect someone's energy bills?
Well, remember, COP is all about how much heat energy you get out for each unit of electricity you put in. So a higher COP means you're squeezing even more heating power out of every kilowatt hour, which means lower energy bills and a smaller carbon footprint. It's a win-win.
So even if electricity prices stay high, these super efficient heat pumps could potentially offset those costs just with their incredible efficiency. That's pretty amazing. What else is in the pipeline?
Another really cool area is the integration of heat pumps with renewable energy sources. Like imagine a heat pump powered by solar panels on your roof, or seamlessly connected to like a community wind farm. That could be a game changer, especially for people who are really passionate about sustainability.
Yeah, it's like creating your own little clean energy ecosystem right there in your home. You're not just saving money, you're also reducing your reliance on fossil fuels. That's really cool. What other innovations are you keeping an eye on?
One thing that's really interesting is the development of smart heat pumps. These systems use sensors and AI to optimize performance based on things like the weather, occupancy patterns in your house, even your personal comfort preferences.
It's like having a heating therapist, constantly analyzing your emotional state through temperature preferences. But seriously, that sounds really convenient. How would those smart features actually work in a typical household?
Well, imagine a heat pump that learns your schedule and preheats your house just before you get home from work, maximizing comfort while minimizing energy waste. Or a system that detects when a room is empty and automatically adjusts the temperature to save energy.
So it's like having a personal heating assistant, working behind the scenes to make your life more comfortable and efficient. That's a pretty compelling vision of the future. Are there any downsides to these smart systems that we should be aware of?
Well, one potential concern is data privacy. As these systems get more sophisticated and interconnected, it's important to think about how our personal data is being collected and used.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like with any new technology, there are always trade-offs to consider. But overall, it sounds like there are some really exciting things happening that could make heat pumps an even more attractive option for homeowners in the coming years. It's amazing to think how much could change in just a few short years.
Absolutely. And these advancements aren't just about fancy gadgets and futuristic tech. They represent a fundamental shift in how we think about heating our homes, moving towards greater efficiency, sustainability, and personalized comfort. It's a really exciting time to be following this field.
Okay, so we've explored the current landscape of heat pumps versus natural gas. We dug into the factors that influence cost. And we even got a glimpse of the amazing innovations that are shaping the future of home heating. It's clear that there's a lot to think about when making this decision. But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. So we've talked about today's choices, but like technology changes so fast. What's like that one breakthrough that could completely change the game and make heat pumps the obvious choice everywhere, even in places like California, maybe even as soon as next year? It's something to think about as you're weighing your options. Any predictions from you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Predicting the future is always a bit risky. But if I had to put my money on one thing, that could really shake things up. I'd say it's the development of a truly affordable and highly efficient cold climate heat pump. Something that could handle even the most brutal winters without costing a fortune.
Okay, now that would be a game changer. So much of the talk about heat pumps is about how they work in milder climates. If we could figure out how to make them work really well in those super cold places, without a crazy price tag.
Yeah.
That would open up a whole new world. What kind of technological leap would we need to see for that to happen?
Well, we need to see some big advancements in a couple of areas. Refrigerant technology and compressor design. We need new refrigerants that can grab heat even at those super low temperatures. And compressors that can handle the extra work without becoming less efficient.
So it's a challenge on multiple fronts. Sounds like it would take some serious innovation. What are the chances we'll actually see something like that anytime soon?
It's tough to say for sure. But there's a lot of smart people working on this. A lot of companies and research labs are pouring resources into next-gen heat pump tech. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some major breakthroughs in the next few years.
Well, that's encouraging. It's good to be reminded that technology is constantly evolving. What seems impossible today could be totally normal in a few years. And for anyone out there trying to decide between a heat pump and natural gas, it's a good reminder to keep up with the latest developments. What doesn't make sense for you right now might be a perfect fit down the road.
Exactly. It's all about staying informed. And remember, you don't have to figure this out all on your own. There are resources out there to help you, like energy efficiency experts and HVAC technicians. They can give you personalized advice based on your specific needs and situation.
That's great advice. It's okay to ask for help. This is a big decision. And having some expert guidance can make the whole process a lot easier. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. We covered a ton of ground today. We talked about the pros and cons of heat pumps versus natural gas. We broke down the things that affect cost. And we even took a peek into the future to see what kind of cool innovations might be coming our way.
I hope this has helped our listeners make more informed decisions about their home heating, and maybe even spark some curiosity about the future of clean energy.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. The more you know, the better choices you can make. Choices that are good for your budget, your comfort, and your values.
And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all the info out there, remember, there are experts who can help. Don't be afraid to reach out to a qualified HVAC technician or energy efficiency expert in your area. They can give you the guidance you need.
That's the perfect note to end on. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We hope you found this deep dive helpful and interesting. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay warm.